This episode of the 46 of 46 podcast is sponsored by Crua Outdoors. Camp comfortably with the world's best insulated tents and outdoors gear. Check out their tents, sleeping bags, pads, and more at cruaoutdoors.com. That's CRUA outdoors.com. Crua Outdoors, the best night's sleep you'll have in the wild. It's 20 degrees out here, and day one of the Northville-Placid Trail is officially underway. We're coming up to the Aluska Lean-To, walking along the cold river, and it is raging today. We're here at the Noah John Rondo Hermitage, 2 miles out from Catlin Bay at Long Lake, climbing up towards the scenic viewpoint, and it is steep. We're walking between the Seward and Santanoni ranges right now. Well, it is a winter wonderland back here at Duck Hole. Crossing the suspension bridge over the Sacandaga River, it's a quiet, peaceful evening here at Spruce Lake number 3. Well, we woke up covered in 2 inches of snow here at the Kelly Point Lean-To. Passing the Cedar River flow, sunny day at Stevens Pond. We're building our campfire early here at Silver Lake to fight off the bugs. Wow. Dude, I have no idea how we're going to cross this swamp. Just walking down the road here in Piseco. Well, I guess it's time to take off the boots and cross the West Stony Creek. 1 mile to Lake Placid, 1 mile left to Northville. You're listening to the 46 of 46 podcast, the Northville-Placid Trail edition. The Northville-Placid Trail, Day 1, Lake Durant to Kelly Point. April 14th, 2020. It was time to embark on an outdoors adventure that I've read a lot about and wanted to experience myself for a long time. A 138-mile trail stretching from my hometown of Lake Placid all the way to the southern Adirondacks to the town of Northville, known as the Northville-Placid Trail. Completed in 1924, this trail is filled with history and traverses some of the most remote backcountry in the Adirondack Park. The trek takes most people anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks to complete as one straight through hike. However, due to life with small children, work schedules, and just everyday life, I had to break the trail up into sections and complete the entire trail over the next few weeks. With this in mind, I had to flip-flop the trail, and I'd hike the first half of the trail northbound and the second half of the trail, or the other side of the map, southbound. So it was going to be a unique way to experience this trail. Our first section would have Josh and I hiking northbound, starting in Blue Mountain Lake at the Lake Durant Campgrounds, north to Lake Placid. Roughly 52 miles over the course of 3 days. And despite the mid-April, still winter-like temperatures, trails, and camping conditions, it was time to head out on this infamous trail and put in some miles. So that's exactly what we did. Our plan for day 1 was to start at the Route 30 crossing at Lake Durant Campground in Blue Mountain Lake and head north with our goal of getting to Long Lake, where an abundance of lean-tos exist throughout the duration of the 14-mile lake. We plan to hike to the Catlin Bay Lean-To and then assess how we feel and either camp out there for the night or push further up Long Lake to Kelly Point. A 20-mile day to kick us off here on day 1 of the Northville-Placid Trail. I was able to get my parents to drive us down from Lake Placid to Blue Mountain Lake on this chilly Tuesday morning. They picked Josh and I up at 5 a.m. and drove us to the Route 30 road crossing at Lake Durant, where we started hiking at 6:30 a.m. My mother snapped a photo of the two of us, and then I told my dad, "You guys can leave without us. We're going to walk home from here." On went my 43-pound, 65-liter pack. Woof. Yeah, a bit on the heavy side. I bring a lot of food. And then off we went into the woods, walking up towards the trailhead register here in the Blue Mountain Wild Forest. The weather was expected to be decent over the next few days. Well, decent as far as April in the ADK goes, with highs in the mid-30s and lows in the low 20s, with little to no precipitation in the forecast, though. Of course, we know forecasts can often be wrong. So obviously, with that in mind, we started out with snow flurries coming down, but not too bad. The trail started out with some ice lining the center of the trail, but mostly melted snow around the woods, just patches here and there. Nothing too major, and we were underway, stoked to finally be out on this trail, beginning our mini through hike. It is 6:30 in the morning, day 1 here on our trip across the Northville-Placid Trail. We are starting at Lake Durant. We are going to hike northbound home to Lake Placid. So, day 1 of the first leg, we're heading to Long Lake. It's about 17 miles. We're going to see how we're feeling at the end of the day. We're either going to stay at the Catlin Bay lean-to, or we're going to push further to the Kelly Point lean-to. We shall see, but the Northville-Placid Trail hike is officially underway. The first section of the trail was nice and dry, leaves scattered on the ground and a nice mix of hardwoods, spruce, and pine trees around the woods. A terrific start to the day. Our first checkpoint would be the O'Neill Flow lean-to and the start of Terrell Pond 3.5 miles away. The one big thing I noticed quickly during this initial stretch was the amount of small to medium-sized river streams that we were crossing, and crossing often. Some of them were simple crossings, while others were sketchy and required a couple minutes of plotting our path across, especially when we could see how slick the rocks were. Trekking poles helped tremendously once again, and I honestly don't know how we would have crossed half of these streams without them, especially this time of year with the higher water and the frozen, slippery rocks. So we just had a river crossing that was, I had to go full send. As I was stepping on a rock to hop from 2 boulders, my pack hit against a tree and then just kind of got me all off balance and knocked me over. So at that point I was like, okay, I'm either going to step in the water or just go for it. And I jumped, bump, 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 across. Fortunately, the rocks weren't slippery, but it was full send at that point. Sometimes you just got to go for it when you're about to tip over. I can't step in the water this early. So far, so good. Fortunately, we didn't have any close calls or falls. Close, but, we didn't get that wet. Well, not yet anyways. Before we started this trail, I figured my trekking poles would stay attached to my pack for the majority of the hike. But I needed them to cross so many streams, as well as pole vault myself across the abundance of muddy stretches. So they stayed in my hands the entire hike. Speaking of mud, like most trails in the ADK, there was a lot of muddy areas, or parts of the trail with standing water, so be mindful of that. It's going to be wet, like most trails in the Adirondacks. We came out to the southern end of Terrell Pond and the O'Neill Flow just after 8 a.m., where there was a tree bridge to cross over a mini waterfall to the lean-to. 8:05 in the morning, we just made it to O'Neill Flow lean-to, checking it out. Well, actually, we're not going to check it out. We're just kind of looking where it is because it's over the river, and the river is raging today. So we're not going to go over there exactly to check it out, but just kind of looking where it is. But we're going to continue up the trail here with Terrell Pond to our right, and a nice chill in the air. Since the water level was so high and raging that day, we opted not to cross over to check it out and instead just continued up the trail along Terrell Pond. The trail skirts along Terrell Pond for 1.2 miles before it comes to the Terrell Pond lean-to on the north end of the lake. It's a nice walk along the water, and the pond is quite calm and has nice mountain views across with big cliffs and slides on it. But we arrived at the Terrell Pond lean-to around 8:40 a.m. And we are now at the Terrell Pond lean-to. Nice little area here. Lean-to has a nice, elegant tilt to it. This lean-to has nice access to the pond, but it doesn't sit directly at it. It's tucked back in the woods a little bit. It's an older lean-to as well that could probably use a facelift since it's, kind of tilting. But we took our first break for the day at the lean-to here, and we had a quick swig and a snack. A little over 2 hours into the day and 4.5 miles closer to Lake Placid. After maybe 10 minutes, we saddled up and kept moving north. At this point, the trail became a lot wetter and very wide. A lot of the trails on this stretch are old logging roads and old tote roads. The woods changed a lot during these next few miles, going from open hardwood forests with no leaves, and then into giant evergreen forests, some really cool areas with plenty of blowdown. But this entire trail is ridden with blowdown, so you can kind of expect that every day. The blue NPT trail markers so far have been quite abundant, and the trail was easy to follow. Right as we entered into a tall, albeit spooky little area of spruce and pine trees, one of those war zone looking forests where there's trees down every which way in the woods forming giant structures and whatnot all over the place. We crossed over a typical stream, nothing special, maybe 3 feet across. And Josh stepped on a log to cross, and the log immediately rolled and he dunked his foot past his ankle, completely filling his boot with water. Didn't take long for that to happen. And neither of us were wearing our gaiters at the time, so that was unfortunate for him. Not for me, of course. I didn't dunk my boot. So only for him, really. Hanging out here by a little river stream. on this super cool section of pine and spruce tree forest here. Lots of green, very blow-down ridden, messy little forest, but it's cool so far. But we had our first casualty, and Josh stepped into the river when the log he was crossing the stream on just completely spun out. And we're currently changing his socks, keep him as dry as possible, even though it's chilly, and wet is not good right now. And there are nice little snowflakes flying around also. So it's a little chilly. Great vibe though in the woods, other than dunking the boot. So, as frustrated as you'd imagine, we stopped so Josh could change his socks and wring out his boot. And since the temperatures were only in the 20s, soaking his boot at this point was obviously not great. He took off the shoe and we wrung it out the best we could, including his insole. I suggested to him to put on 2 fresh socks. And since the boot was soaked, by wearing 2 socks now, his foot would not be as wet as quickly. And this turned out to work pretty well. It's worked nicely for me in the past in the high peaks many times. The old double sock. We carried on, walking along the giant spruce trees lining the trail, and finished this 2.1 mile stretch where we took a hard right onto a snowmobiling trail. Just came out onto a road, like a dirt road that is covered in probably 8 inches of just pure ice from this past winter's packed down snow that has not melted yet, which is now an ice skating rink. This is slippery. Jeez Louise. Oh, and I'm being told that we have a half mile on this, so it's going to be a slower going half mile, that's for sure. Oh, moose tracks. Cool. The snowmobile trail was a 10-foot wide ice rink this time of year, though. So we walked along the left side and soon came to the footbridge crossing the Salmon River, where we stopped and enjoyed a swig and a snack. It is 10:16 and we have made it to the footbridge that is crossing the Salmon River. And the river is high today. Wow. It's very high. Get swept down that river real quick. Oh, that's a nice view though, looking up the river right now with the mountains in the background there. It was a great place to hang out for a bit at the river, a good spot to fill up, and there was even log benches to sit on. At this point, the sun started to come out, which felt great, and the woods were mostly sans snow here, so that was the type of environment that we were hoping for. Green woods without snow. I mean, it is April. Come on, spring. Just finished a lovely little snack break here at the Salmon River. Great spot to sit down, little benches by the river. Nice view. So now we are heading back on the trail, 2.7 miles away from the scenic overlook, which is supposed to be the highest point of elevation on the trail. You're going to climb up a little bit, gain some elevation. I think it's a little over 3,000 feet, if I'm remembering correctly. Not of gain, but of elevation when you're at the top. But that should be the mountain views of the trail here. And the sun is out, the forest is green, the sky is blue and white. Things are going well right now. Josh's boot is drying. We're cruising.
Feeling good. Feeling good. Hey, I'm feeling good.
Josh is feeling good. He's feeling good. Josh is good. He's feeling good. Shortly after the Salmon River crossing, the trail takes a left off the snowmobiling trail at a sign and begins climbing up. This part of the trail was wet, but at least the sun was out now, so that was good. The trail is straight as an arrow for the next couple of miles, gradually gaining elevation as you climb up towards the scenic viewpoint, as it's called on the map, which is the highest elevation point on the map at just over 3,000 feet. Gaining some elevation as we climb up to the scenic viewpoint. The trail's very wet, covered in leaves, nice and wide, stepping over a ton of trees down at the moment. But the trail's super wet. Great view right now of Blue Mountain to our left. Nice clear view through the trees. Cool slides and cliffs towards the top of it, which is awesome. Sun is shining, gaining some elevation. We continued the gradual climb up this wide trail, skirting around the blowdown and the wet areas along the trail, with great views of Blue Mountain and Buck Mountain on your left. The sky was blue. We were finally on the NPT. There wasn't any snow in